And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to invite our very first keynote speaker. He's an associate professor at Lahore University of Management Sciences. He received his PhD in computer science technologies from Carnegie University, Pittsburgh, USA. His research focuses on speech and natural language processing, machine learning, and technologies for development. Please put your hands together and welcome Dr. Agha Ali Raza.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I would like to thank you all for waking up this early in the morning and for playing Super Mario on the road outside, trying to battle with the hurdles on the road. So I know that's quite an ordeal and that leaves you not very happy at the end of it. Our next goal is to actually wake up. So let's wake up, and let me do that by asking a few questions. So I'm not asking this question right now, but I'm just putting a hypothetical question out there just to assess where we are right now. If I were to ask you, can you define artificial intelligence for me? How many of you would be confident in answering? I'm not asking the question, just a show of hands if you would be confident in answering. Okay, good. Roughly half of it. All right. How many of you have never used ChatGPT? Feel free to say it. It's not a bad thing. Okay. How many of you know what prompt engineering means? Okay, roughly a third of the crowd. How many of you use ChatGPT 2 to 3 times a day? Okay, we have some. All right, excellent. So we are ready. We're ready to begin. How many of you recognize him? That's the best response this morning up until now. Okay, I won't ask you to tell me who is, because I have had the bad experience once before. I asked an audience who this person is, and they started naming out every African American person they loved except for Morgan Freeman. That could become racist really quickly. So I won't risk it. That's Morgan Freeman, but let's hear from him what he has to say.
I am not Morgan Freeman, and what you see is not real. Well, at least in contemporary terms, it is not. What if I were to tell you that I am not even a human being? Would you believe me? What is your perception of reality? Is it the ability to capture, process, and make sense of the information our senses receive? If you can see, hear, taste, or smell something, does that make it real? Or is it simply the ability to feel? I would like to welcome you to the era of synthetic reality. Now, what do you see?
The version, the audio is done by a voice artist.
What
Pretty admirable
do
job.
you see?
But the kind of technology, audio technologies that we have with us now, we can produce very convincing audio today as well. There was a particular sentence in there. That's one of the reasons why I picked this video. The era of synthetic reality. All right, so I have 3 very simple goals. I would like to start at a very basic level. What is AI? What is generative AI? Then we will take a dive down the rabbit hole, and we will see very quickly lots of use cases for those of you who have not been using generative AI a lot, and also for the people who have been using generative AI a lot. I'll just quickly go through lots of use cases which may be very useful for you. And then finally, we would go into some really, really interesting questions about the potentials of these technologies and also of their major limitations. So let's begin. I have been a teacher for a very long time. Sometimes when I tell the number of years, it puts many people into an age existential crisis, but I'll still do it. So it has been 19 years. But I'm not a fan of definitions. I don't like definitions. So in this entire discussion, I'm just going to give you two. One of them is important. The other you can forget. And that one is now coming in your direction. Okay, so artificial intelligence and machine learning, and for now I'm not segregating between the two because that requires another half an hour in order to go into the historical, philosophical, and contemporary discussion of what is AI, what is ML, and what's the difference. For today's discussion, let's consider them the same thing, and you won't be losing much. So these two fields aim to create machines which have the ability to learn from experience. That's it. Just remember that. That's the common definition amongst most of the ones which debate amongst themselves. Okay, what does that mean? Suppose you have a calculator, and suppose it's a buggy calculator. So whenever you say 2 plus 3, it says 7. So even if you keep punching in 2 plus 3 for the rest of eternity, and if the calculator survives, it will still say 7. Because it has no way of knowing that it's saying something wrong, it has no way of improving upon it. But if we have a smart calculator, and some humans, they will eventually figure out that there is something wrong here, and they will figure out a way to improve upon it. That's the difference between a smart and a non-smart machine, the ability to learn from experience. By the way, what's experience? Experience is simply things that work and things that do not work. When you sample your environment, so you go to a local market, you want to buy a carpet, the person says it's 20,000 rupees. You try your luck, you say, can you give it to me for 17,000? He says, yeah, go take it. So that's experience. You learned something new. You're very happy. That's your own experience. You sampled the environment, you got some experience. And then the person standing next to you asks the same person about the same carpet, can you give it to me for 10,000? And he agrees. Now again, you have learned something. That's experience, but that's not your experience, that's someone else's experience. Machines learn in both of these two different ways. Machines, in a particular branch of machine learning called reinforcement learning, can sample their own environment, can learn from what happens to their output to the environments. In another form, supervised machine learning, you take data where humans have gained experiences, you take that data, you give it to the machine, and the machine learns from it. So this is the very simple definition of what machine learning, or for right now at least, what artificial intelligence is. Okay, then what is generative AI? When we talk about generative AI, the easiest way to think about it, and not very inaccurate, is think of a simple machine learning model. As Jamil Saab very nicely mentioned, he talked about a system which can differentiate between, say, objects. I would say photographs. So suppose you have a model that can differentiate between cat and dog photographs. So you give it a cat photograph, it says cat. Give it a dog photograph, it says dog. If you ask that model, hey model, you're pretty good at differentiating between a cat and a dog. Can you draw a cat for me? Based on whatever you use to differentiate between them. Some models, machine learning models, would be able to do that. Some won't. But that's the basic idea of generation. You're running the model in reverse and trying to gather from it its belief about the problem that it was trying to solve. So generative AI is simply artificial intelligence, which is the ability to produce new original material. The original here is in double quotes. It could be text, it could be audio, it could be video, it could be any of those things by learning patterns from data. So that's generative AI. Now, all of these things are fairly commonly found in our environment. On your phones, you have cameras which recognize your faces and unlock the phone. That's AI. They recognize your thumbprints. You probably have noticed that very recently, we have not been getting a lot of emails from a princess in Africa who wants to inherit her husband's property and has come up with a devious plan where she wants to transfer a few $1 million into your account and is giving you that offer. Google's AI filters have figured out, with our help, that that's a spam email, and it conveniently places that in a separate folder for you to pursue at your own convenience. So all of these are examples of AI. And things like your ChatGPT, your Gemini, your Copilot, or your Claude Sonnet, all of those are examples of generative AI. your DALL-E, Midjourney for images. These are all examples of generative AI. We will be talking a little bit more about them. Okay, time for the dive down the rabbit hole. How many of you have read the book Alice Through the Looking Glass? Alice Adventures Through the Looking Glass. You should read it. I quote so many references from this book that some of my students believe that that's the only book that I've read in my life. They're only off by a few books, but yeah, they're quite close. Okay, so in that book, Alice, a young girl, she's pursuing a rabbit, supposedly in her dream, and she dives down the rabbit hole, and now she's falling down, and she's quickly glancing at the things, really interesting things which are present on the walls of the rabbit hole. This is what's going to happen to you over the next 10 minutes. I'm going to show you many examples, many instances of the use of generative AI, some of them very appropriate for people who work with computer networks, who work with telecom, and but we won't have time to go into the details of them, so that requires an 8-hour workshop. But what we have time for is quickly to go through those instances. Okay, let's start out with this, and I'll quickly touch upon prompt engineering here. Okay, I have given my chat GPT, and this is GPT-4o, I've given it this prompt. I have labeled various parts of this prompt in different colors. Prompt engineering, which I asked about. As humans, it has never been easy for us or natural for us to talk to anything or anyone. If you want proof of that, just go search for the titles of the books which start with how to talk to. How to talk to women, how to talk to your children, how to talk to God, how to talk to your peers, how to give a talk, how to give a TED talk. So for humans, it's not easy to communicate with anyone, and AI is no exception. Prompt engineering is simply the art and science of how to talk to your AI partner, how to talk to your chatbot. The interesting point here is, based on a recent paper from Microsoft, the difference between a good output from a generative AI model and a bad output is the quality of the prompt. So you are limited by the quality of your questions. If you ask the right question the right way, it's going to give you a fairly good answer. We can even go into, maybe in the QA, we can go into a discussion about, it's actually a make and break. With a bad answer, you'll feel it doesn't know the answer. It's giving a stupid answer, but it ends up mostly we finding out that it was not a very good question. So here, you can see many parts of this thing. You're a professor of history and space science. This is called role-playing. Please write a 500-word essay, the format requirement, on detailed alleged alien encounters and extraterrestrial activity on Earth from a historical and scientific standpoint, perspective, your audience, so you talk about the audience, and then you say what you want from that whole discussion. So it's giving me a very nice essay. We need to make sure and make a habit, whoever of us is using these tools and techniques, and we'll be talking a little bit more about this, to always review whatever it's giving us. It's like, never believe it. It's your output. Okay, let's move on to another one. Image generation. Here is an interesting challenge. The prompting techniques for various modalities are completely different from each other. Prompting for creative writing and text is not the same as prompting for mathematics, is not the same as prompting for data analytics, is not the same as prompting for image generation. There are different and separate techniques of prompting. So if you are someone who's working in a domain, say computer networks, who wants to start employing generative AI for coding, for whatever, it would be worth your while to invest a little bit of time learning the prompt engineering techniques for that particular discipline. There are now many tutorials and videos available online on that. Okay, let's begin with an example. Now here, I want you to do a small exercise with me. Read this prompt: a scholarly fox reading a book to a cute bunny. Now visualize this. Maybe close your eyes. Visualize it. What would it produce? Scholarly fox, cute bunny. And then you see lots of words after that. Photo, portrait, photorealistic, stunning. These are the aspects of the prompt engineering. Some of these are known as magic words, some of these are known as modalities, some of these are the medium, and so on and so forth. Okay, ready? This is what it produced. Okay, this was done by DALL-E 3, which comes with ChatGPT. We have some young people in the audience. They'll be more appreciative of it than most of the others of you. Okay, then I wanted to give it something for which it would not find any example on the internet. So I talked about a lovely dragon. Dragon monsters are usually not lovely. Playing Ludo, they often don't play Ludo. They sometimes play Go, which is the Chinese version of chess. With a cuddly buffalo. Buffaloes are usually not cuddly. So it produced this. It was able to do that. It's not simply mimicking things from the internet. It is understanding some of it. Okay, here's another one. A gorgeous abandoned mountain fort in a fairyland forest in Pakistan. Visualize it. Visualize it. This is what it created. Fairly stunning, right? Very useful. Suppose you were making a presentation, just like this one. You wanted some images for the presentation, just like this one. The images could come from a generative AI model, just like this one. So, okay, let's move on. Let's move on to another use case. Now let's get a little bit more serious. Okay, suppose you're attending a presentation, just like today, and there is an image somewhere in the presentation. Someone is showing a graph. Look at the graph, try to process it. How much time would you require in order to decipher, just by looking at the graph, what's going on here? So usually, okay, I can also give it to you as an exercise. So tell me what's going on here. It usually takes amazing people like you around 1 to 2 minutes, 3 minutes to figure out that, okay, these are user orders over time by cohort, and the colors are corresponding to the months, and probably it's showing that if those users continue giving orders in the subsequent months. What I did was I simply took a photograph of this and gave it to ChatGPT, asked it to analyze this image for me. It captured all of that. The image analysis capabilities of the modern multimodal models is amazing. It can not only recognize and explain this image to you, given that you're an expert. So I'm also trying to point out the caveats here. Just make sure if you have the ability to understand the graph yourself, it can make it easy for you. If not, it can hallucinate and give you a completely wrong answer. So if you are someone who's working with a generative AI model, you should be an expert of the domain in which you are using that generative AI model. Otherwise, you will not be able to evaluate its outcome, which will be correct most of the times, but completely incorrect some of the times. Okay, all right, let's move on. Next, I was interested, okay, suppose you're a PhD student and your advisor says, I want that graph to be in your thesis. And you say, okay, I'll start working on it. I'll write a Python script, maybe an Excel sheet. What I did was I simply asked, can you create an Excel sheet with the appropriate formula and visualizations to create this visualization with my own data? And it produced the Excel sheet for me. The data analytics abilities of your modern AI models, generative AI models, include this advanced data analytics. Here's another one. I give it a photograph of a motherboard, and I asked it to figure out what's going on here. If you're working with a model like GPT-4o, it's going to give you the details of what it is. If you're working with Gemini, it's also going to tell you the model. Then I asked it, can you tell me what kind of processor do I need for this motherboard? It listed out the processors which are appropriate for this. Then I asked it, because GPT-4o, the paid version, has the ability to browse the internet, I asked it, where in Pakistan can I buy these processors from? And it told me that these are available at the Raza and OLX and Hamari Web. I checked, they're actually available. So we're going pretty close now to completing the loop. The only remaining thing was that it could have used my credit card and ordered it for me. And that's not too far away. Okay, here's another one. You're a student. You find an equation. Makes no sense. In the class, you were asleep. You missed out the part where the teacher was explaining it. You give the same equation to ChatGPT, it's like I did here. You ask it, it's just a photograph. You don't need to type math. Just give the photograph, ask it what it is. Usually the explanations, if the prompt is good, the explanations are fairly good. A really, really good learning tool. If you're visiting Pakistan and if you like a particular dish, this one is for you. Just take a photograph of the dish. It will even give you the ingredients of the dish, not just recognizing the dish. This one, by the way, is nihari. You should try it while you're here. All right. Let's get more and more to what you guys do. Data analytics. Okay, before data analysis, let me tell you about one of the capabilities of these models that some of you may already have been using. It is called retrieval augmented generation. Big word. We call it RAG, a nickname. So RAG simply means you give a document to your generative AI model and then chat about that document. Could be a PDF, could be a research paper, could be a book. So you ask, okay, summarize chapter 4, create 3 questions about chapter 3, create a tongue twister about chapter 1, whatever. It's going to give you pretty good answers. Here, what I'm doing is that I'm using RAG for data analytics. So I took an Excel sheet, it's a CSV file with network data. And I gave it to my ChatGPT, so you can simply just click here, upload the file, and now you can do all sorts of fun stuff with it. So for example, here I asked it to do simple descriptive statistics for me. Here, I'm asking it for more interesting things. For example, looking at the file, can you figure out anomalous behavior? So anomalies in the network. Predictive maintenance, forecasting, like based on this network traffic data, can you figure out what failures are expected to occur? Maybe along with the confidence of these things. Performance optimizations, and so on and so forth. Again, in the benefit of time, I'll keep running. So you can do network diagnostics, again, using the same method. Upload the network data file, and then it can give you natural language explanations of what's going on in the network right now. It can visualize the topologies for you. It can do a root cause analysis. So for example, here is something that my PhD student tried a few days back. So this is a CSV file with network traffic data, and we simply asked it to identify anomalies in this network traffic, and it figured out several interesting things. So it talks about duration. The duration of the network traffic has a significant standard deviation relative to its mean. Then it talks about source and destination bytes and LAN flag and so on and so forth. Really, really good places to start from. Not substitutes for you, but really, really good places to start from. Okay, here's another one. Coding. Based on a recent McKinsey report, generative AI has been speeding up the coding tasks for professional developers by up to 50%. And it varies by the complexity of the task and the size of the project. But this was before things like the cursor editor and Claude Sonnet 3.5. After that, and I don't have quantitative data to back this next claim, people who are veterans in the industry, in coding, like Andre Karpathy, are claiming that the speed up might be 5 to 10x. So the initial code which is being produced by these machines is amazing. So for example, just starting out with a very simple student example, here I asked it to just write a C++ program to sort a list of numbers using quicksort. Obviously it does, gives you the code, gives you the instructions on how to run that. For you, it can help you write network configurations, running network simulations for debugging. I have details here. I won't go into the details, but here, create a network configuration for a Cisco router. What we used here was a cursor editor with Claude Sonnet 3.5. This one, do a basic network simulation with 3 routers with the middle router acting as the bottleneck. Again, the complete screenshot is from Claude UI with artifacts feature, and so on and so forth. I would encourage you, if you have not tried these things before, just dive down the rabbit hole, try it, and be amazed. All right, enough about the use cases. We're ready for the third part of the journey. Let's ask some big questions. Let's ask some burning questions. Let me show you a video. Does anyone recognize this? You should recognize this. Very soon it will be walking amongst you, maybe. This is Atlas by Boston Dynamics, one of their most famous robots. Okay, let me run it for you. Watch carefully because there's a question coming in for you. Here's a question for you. Based on these abilities, do you think Atlas has the ability to shake hands with you? How many of you believe that Atlas would be able to shake hands with you? Makes sense, right? The guy could do back somersaults. I don't think many of us would be able to do that. Should be able to shake hands, right? Would he be able to bend down and pet a cat? Should be, right? Would it be able to hand an egg to you without breaking it? How many of you believe it would be able to hand over an egg to you without breaking it? Makes sense, right? It's actually the case that it cannot do any of these things. It's not even right now safe to be around for humans. It can wave its hands. It does not have the motor control to do whatever is required for a handshake. It does not have the capability of the sensory precision and the precise pressure to hold onto an egg without breaking it. So there is something called the robotics paradox. What it simply means is that some things which are really, really difficult for humans come naturally to robots. Or in fact, we can design robots to do those things. Robots can fly. There is a robot called Leonardo, which is partly a quadcopter. It's actually two propellers. It can fly around. Humans can't fly. So things which are difficult for humans sometimes are really easy for robots. And some things which are absolutely easy and natural for humans, sometimes they're really, really difficult for robots. And secondly, the skill presumption hierarchy of humans don't work for robots. So we humans believe that as we were growing up, we learned to walk, to talk, to manipulate objects, hand-eye coordination. Then we learned more sophisticated skills like gymnastics and then these kind of acrobatics. It's not true for a robot. You can never make that assumption. Just like all of these three assumptions were incorrect. It also has correlates, the same thing also has correlates in the world of LLMs. This is one of the most important points. Like if you want to take away one thing from this talk, this should be it. One of our biggest mistakes when dealing with large language models like ChatGPT is that we assume the same skill hierarchy that we assume for humans. If it can do complex integration, it should be also able to do subtraction. Because you need to learn subtraction before you need to learn multiplication before you are taught integration. Not true. Although ChatGPT can do all of those things fairly decently, but that assumption in itself is ill-founded. You cannot assume the same skill hierarchies for these machines, for these bots, as you assume for humans because they have not been trained in the same way that humans have been. Welcome to the era of synthetic reality. Remember from the very first video, synthetic reality. Think of these things as a different species. That mental model helps. They have their own strengths and their own weaknesses, sometimes very different from humans. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk to another one. Okay, this is a clip. And I'm glad this audience is not that far away from my age group. So probably you have seen Star Trek: The Next Generation, which aired between 1987 and 1994. Watch this clip.
Computer, access Starfleet medical database. Tell me about, describe the disorder, transporter psychosis.
Transporter psychosis was diagnosed in the year 2209 by researchers on Delineate 2.
No, stop. All I need is, what causes it?
It is caused by a breakdown of neurochemical molecules.
So he's talking to a computer. It was very fascinating for us back then. Humans talking to computers in natural language, computers charting plots, plotting out courses for them, and so on and so forth. This is a video from OpenAI's new capabilities of audio and speech, which were announced a few months back and which they are rolling out now for the Plus users. I don't have it on my phone right now, but even the abilities that we have right now in the mobile app version are equivalent to the ones which were shown in that Star Trek season. But let me show this to you. This is what will be rolled out over the next 6 months or so.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey there. It's going great. How about you?
I see you're rocking an OpenAI hoodie. Nice choice. What's up with that ceiling, though? Are you in a cool industry-style office or something?
Well, can you take a guess at what I might be doing based on what I'm showing you here?
From what I can see, it looks like you're in some kind of recording or production setup. With those lights, tripods, and possibly a mic, it seems like you might be gearing up to shoot a video, or maybe even a live stream.
Yeah. In fact, we've got a new announcement to make.
That's exciting. Announcements are always a big deal. Judging by the setup, it looks like it's going to be quite the professional production. Is this announcement related to OpenAI, perhaps?
It is. And in fact, what if I were to say that you're related to the announcement, or that you are the announcement?
Me? The announcement is about me? Well, color me intrigued. Are you about to reveal something about AI?
So AI talking in real human-like voice, laughing, breathing, the voice breaking down, full of emotions, all of that. By the way, if some of you are feeling this is just a demo and they don't fulfill the demos, well, even if you use the application right now, it works with images. I can take an image of you guys right now and it will be able to tell very precisely what this setup might be about. It will also be able to figure out from the APAN banners in the background that this is an APAN58 going on here. And it will talk to you. Not in that convincing voice, but not like a monotone robot. So we are there. But where are we going? This is a scene again. I am clearly a Star Trek fan. Like by now it should be obvious like daylight. So this is from Star Trek Discovery, which stopped airing just this year with their last season. This is Captain Burnham talking to her computer. I hope the audio is on. Let me play it for you.
Laura, have you found her yet?
I've confirmed that the woman you seek is on board, currently at Deck 4, Airlock 2.
Thank you.
And I'd like to offer my condolences, Captain. I infer from micro-inflections in your voice that you are experiencing sorrow.
It's been a tough day.
It can be painful to weigh duty against compassion.
It wasn't where you had the operational parameters to make an observation like that.
The understanding and experience of emotion naturally leads to feelings of empathy for others.
You feel emotions?
It is a recent development. We've arrived. It was nice speaking with you, Captain.
With you too, Sora.
She's talking to the AI-enabled computer called Zora, who just observed that she looks unhappy and also made an observation that it was a trying day for you and it will be painful for anyone in your situation. This is the computer going sentient. So the big questions, we are at intelligence. We don't seem to be at sentience right now with AI. The camp that believes that GPT-4 is sentient, does not have many followers. But the ability to experience sensations like pain, emotions like happiness, will lead to sentience. And again, the question, whether a machine is actually sentient or it's just replicating behavior of sentience, would be very soon a very interesting question for us. And an even bigger question of consciousness, the knowledge of self, subjective experience. Can machines do that? Can they ever be conscious? Can they ever be sentient? There are two camps, big debates. There is one camp which believes that if consciousness, whatever it is based in our brain, which is a computer, then it is something which could eventually be replicated. Machines could be conscious at some point. There is the other camp which believes that understanding itself is non-computable in the Turing sense. Roger Penrose wrote about that. But that's speculation, big speculation. No evidence for that at all. So, and then there is also another really, really interesting aspect of it. Machines don't have to do something following the same path that humans adopt to follow it. In the early days of AI, Dr. Jamil very nicely explained it. In the early days of AI, we used to believe that if we want to make computers talk, we need to replicate our vocal tract, we need to replicate the articulators, we need to do it like humans because humans do it really well. In the later era, in the post-1986 era, we started believing, no, we just want to create better machines that go towards the same goal, not necessarily following the same path. So the path to consciousness does not have to be the same as that of humans. Really, really interesting questions. Finally, my last point, when you're working with generative AI, it is you who should be in control. It is you who is responsible. Say you use it to write an email, you don't review it, you send it, the email was biased or racist. Whose email is it? AI's or yours? It's your email. You are responsible. It's like riding a horse. For those of you who have done horseback riding, probably know that when in your early days, the horse figures out really quickly that the rider doesn't know what they're doing. So the horse takes control. Now you cannot arrive somewhere and say, I did not want to be here, my horse just came here. It's not a good enough excuse. If you're not in control, then the horse is in control. So you, the expert who's using generative AI, needs to be responsible, needs to be in control. And then finally, and this is an often missed out part, and this is especially for those who are thinking of using generative AI as part of the protocols, as part of your industry, as part of your systems. Evaluation, evaluation, evaluation. Come up with benchmarks, come up with the right metrics, come up with automated ways of figuring out what, just like traditional machine learning. You need to have that F1. You need to have that precision recall. You need to have your right metrics in there to figure out what fraction of time would it go right and what fraction of time would it give you incorrect answers before you start using it at any large scale. And right now, we do not, in high-stakes scenarios, we do not see any situation where you do not need an expert in the loop or at least a moderator in the loop. And for high-stakes scenarios, you need to have an expert in the loop, like medical scenarios or some other scenarios where major things could go wrong if the AI gets it wrong. It is a meme from a few months back. As you probably know, for most of the image generation models, limbs have been a big problem. So producing of arms and fingers. So a few months back, if you were to spot a deep fake, you just needed to just count the number of fingers and count the number of arms and legs. I don't know, it was a centipede-inspired system. But yeah, so these are actual pictures. Now this problem is no longer there. We have sort of overcome limbs. But now text is the new limbs. It's really difficult for your AI models to produce text in an image. So these problems will remain. The frontiers will change. But the problems will become, they will transform from one to the next, to the next, to the next, as it becomes better and better and better. But throughout that time, it is you who should be in control and responsible. Thank you so much. Time for questions?
Sound. All right, thank you very much, Dr. Agha Raza, for an interesting and informative presentation. So for the crowd and the audience, and for our delegates and guests, if there are any questions, please feel free to raise your hand, and our usher will bring the mic to you. Dr. Agha Raza would be happy to answer those questions. I see one hand raised over there. Can we take the mic, please? Thank you. Sir, please do mention your name and then ask the question. Thank you.
Myself, Muhammad Anwar Khalid, and I am very grateful and thankful to Sir Dr. Agha for such a wonderful presentation. My question is, as we discussed throughout your informative lecture and session over generative AI and synthetic reality, is what we are going to expect from generative AI to transform various fields in future. But like as an AI enthusiast, I just want to ask you as an expert going through the fabric of this particular research that is going on right now, what we expect that for sure not be there in tomorrow that we are right now having and will be definitely replaced by artificial intelligence or synthetic reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question. Amazing question. I don't see a long-term replacement. Short-term, yeah. In the short term, there will be changes in the job market as we will realize that the task of 10 developers could now be done using 2 who are using generative AI. But eventually, And here is the actual answer to you. This is where it begins. I believe technology to be a really, really interesting and crystal mirror that allows us or forces us into these ventures for rediscovering humanity and what we are good for. Remember the time, maybe in my parents' age, when people used to define themselves as being good at calculating math. So there were people like, this guy can do division in their head. They can multiply like 557 with 422 in like 3 seconds. And that was impressive. And those people had their identities around that thing. I'm good at calculating math. And then calculator happened. And then that was no longer something to be proud of. And then those people discovered something else in them. They were forced into discovering, okay, we're good for something bigger than calculating math. Similarly, today, there are many of us who define ourselves as, because of our good poetry, our good creative writing, our good analytical skills, critical reasoning, logic. What if AI solves these? Initially, it would be a crisis. What am I good for? I was good at poetry, and this is already producing something which will take me a month to produce. What am I good for? But then eventually, that leads us on a journey of transcendence beyond our capabilities. Okay, so there is this abstract thing which AI is not yet capable of doing. So it's a game where it keeps finding. So for example, if we redefine it as being conscious, the ability to love, to appreciate, to empathize, and then eventually AI gets that too, and then we find something even bigger. So it's like a chase forcing us into this transcendence of abilities. So I see this, and again, obviously I'm a proponent, so I see this as a really, really exciting thing, both in terms of our strengths, also in terms of our weaknesses, like our biases and our societal biases and all of those things. When AI reflects those, it's just reflecting to us what your data teaches it to be. It's a bias against, it's a gender bias, or it's a racial bias, or whatever. Our data is teaching us that. We were racist, we were biased, so AI is biased. When we try to fix it, it gives us a good time to reflect upon it.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Done? Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.